Welcome back to the deep dive. Usually when we crack open the world of Harry Potter, the brain just it immediately goes to the good stuff, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The magic, the fantasy.
Right. We are instantly transported to the Great Hall with the floating candles and the food. We're thinking about the roar of the crowd at a Quidditch match.
The smell of butterbeer.
Yes. The spells, the epic battle between good and evil on this grand operatic scale. It is escapism at its absolute finest. I mean, it's the ultimate comfort food.
It really is. It's that fantasy element that pulls you in. It's like a warm blanket.
Yeah.
You're entering a world where, honestly, most of your problems can be solved with a swish and a flick.
But today, we are doing something pretty different. We're going to strip away the magic.
Just for a moment.
Right, at least for a moment, to look at where the story actually begins. We are going back to the suburbs. We are going back to number 4, Privet Drive. We are talking about the Dursleys.
It's a fascinating and, honestly, a much darker place to start than I think most people realize. When you take away that whimsy, you're left with something very gritty.
That is exactly it, because I think for a lot of us, especially if you grew up watching the movies or reading the books as a kid, the Dursleys are, well, they're the comic relief.
They really are presented that way at first.
Yeah, they're these cartoonish villains. You've got Uncle Vernon literally turning purple and shouting, Aunt Petunia craning her neck over the garden fence to spy on the neighbors.
Dudley throwing a massive tantrum because he didn't get, what was it, 37 presents?
Right, 36 last year, so he needs 37. We laugh at them. They're almost like Roald Dahl characters. Just grotesque and silly.
We do laugh, and in a way, we're completely encouraged to do that. They're written with a heavy dose of satire. J.K. Rowling is definitely poking fun at a certain type of British middle-class conformist.
Do the worst kind of suburbanite.
Exactly. But the mission of this deep dive today, and this is based on this incredible video essay by Movie Flame that we've been analyzing the mission, is to challenge that perception. We need to stop laughing for a second and actually look at the reality of Harry's childhood.
Right, because the source material we're working with today isn't just the surface-level movie stuff. It dives deep into all 7 books, but also the extended writings on Pottermore and the Wizarding World lore.
It's a comprehensive look.
And when you lay out the chronological details of how they treated him without the laugh track, without the whimsical John Williams music score, it paints a picture of systemic abuse and trauma that is genuinely disturbing.
It really is. We're going to be unpacking the psychology behind Vernon and Petunia, the specific behaviors that define them, and the hidden lore that explains why they are the way they are.
Which is so crucial to understand.
And I think the central theme we're going to keep coming back to is this concept of normalcy. Normalcy as a weapon.
Normalcy as a weapon. Man, that is a heavy phrase.
Precisely. We're looking at the shift from them being a satire of the middle class to being a literal case study in child neglect and cruelty. And the big question we're trying to answer for you today is why? Why were they so incredibly hostile?
And the source argues, and I think this is a huge insight, that it wasn't just bigotry. It wasn't just that they hated magic. It was that they were terrified.
Fears.
It always comes back to fear, doesn't it?
It always does.
So let's get right into it. Let's set the scene. Number 4, Privet Drive. If you look at the descriptions in the text, it's aggressive in its blandness.
The setting is absolutely crucial here. The source describes their home as perfectly normal, perfectly ordered, and just completely unremarkable.
Like every other house on the street.
Yes, and that is by design. That house is their fortress. You have the square hedges, the spotless car in the driveway, the absolute silence of the neighborhood. It's a fortress of mediocrity.
And Vernon's job, right. He's the director of a firm called Grunnings. And what do they make?
Drills.
Drills. You literally couldn't pick a more boring product if you tried.
It's perfect, isn't it? It's a basic, straightforward product for a basic, straightforward man.
Yeah.
But think about what a drill actually does. It's loud, it's blunt, and its only purpose is to bore holes in things. It forces its way through whatever is in its path.
That is Vernon to a T.
Exactly. Vernon works for a company that makes drills. He wears boring ties. He complains about completely mundane things. He is the epitome of middle-class conformity.
But the source makes a really interesting distinction here that we need to talk about.
Okay, lay it on me.
It's not just that the Dursleys wanted to be normal. They were obsessed with the appearance of being normal.
Oh, that's a big difference. One is just a state of being, but the other is a performance.
It is a performance. Being normal is just living your life. Obsessing over the appearance of normalcy, that is mechanism. They were so obsessed with how things looked to the neighbors that they were willing to lock a child to starve rather than risk finding.
They live their entire lives for an audience that they didn't even really like. It's that keep up with the Joneses mentality taken to a pathological extreme. Like, if the neighbors see a weed in the garden, it's a moral failure.
Right, it's a reflection on their actual soul. So let's unpack the psychology of that hatred, because the expert analysis from our source suggests that Vernon's hatred specifically stems from fear. It's not just, I don't like wizards. It's wizards threaten my entire reality.
Think about Vernon Dursley as a man who desperately needs to be the king of his castle.
Right.
He needs to dominate his environment. He bullies his employees. He controls his family. He determines what is on the television, when they eat, where they go.
The ultimate micromanager of his own life.
Exactly. So admitting that magic exists, that's admitting that the world is uncontrollable.
You can't exactly tell a spell what to do.
No, you can't. It's admitting that the world is far more complex and wondrous and terrifying than he can handle. He can't dominate magic. He can't drill a hole in it.
So he just rejects it entirely.
If he accepts it, he has to accept that he is. And Vernon Dursley cannot handle being small. His ego is incredibly fragile.
That makes so much sense. He builds a small, boring world so he can feel like a big man inside it. But then you have Petunia. Her fear seems different. It feels more, personal, less about power, more about raw emotion.
It is deeply. Petunia's fear is rooted in rejection. We'll get into her backstory a bit more later, but the core of it is that she was rejected by the magical world first.
She didn't get the letter.
She didn't get the letter. She watched her sister, Lily, get invited to this amazing, secret, exclusive world, and she was left behind.
Stuck in the mundane.
Yes. So to protect her own ego, she rejected the world that rejected her. She decided that if she couldn't be part of it, then it wasn't worth being part of.
Classic sour.
Exactly, but to a toxic level. She said it was freakish. It's a pure survival mechanism for her self-esteem.
But with devastating consequences for her nephew. She takes that childhood rejection and turns it into a weapon.
She does. And this is exactly where the satire transforms into something sinister. Rowling wrote them as stereotypes, people obsessed with status, competing with neighbors about lawns and cars. We all know people like that.
Sure.
But the source notes that when that satire meets child rearing, that's when it crosses the line into abuse.
Because they actually believed that crushing the magic out of Harry was a public service.
They did. They honestly believed they were helping society, and in a twisted way, helping him. They thought if we punish him enough, if we starve him enough, if we isolate him enough, maybe we can make him normal.
They were trying to cure him, like his magic was a disease.
In their minds, yes. They're ordinary people committing extraordinary cruelty in the name of normalcy. They thought they were the good guys, protecting their suburban paradise from the chaos of magic.
And that leads us directly into the darkest part of this deep dive. We need to actually deconstruct all the abuse. And I want to be super clear here. As our sources, we are talking about physical and emotions. This isn't just, oh, Harry had to do some extra chores.
No, we have to acknowledge the comedy mask that the fandom often puts on the Dursleys. We laugh at the exploding cake or Dudley's tongue swelling up. But if you list their actions chronologically, as the source did, the humor completely evaporates.
It really does.
It's just a list of crimes against.
So let's start with the most iconic and honestly the most horrific example. The cupboard under the stairs.
It's become such a pop culture reference, hasn't it? The cupboard under the stairs. It sounds almost quaint now.
Like a cozy little nook.
But think about the reality. They were storing a child like an object, like you would a vacuum cleaner or a broom.
It's dark, it's dusty, it's full of spiders.
And it's tiny. He lived in there for 10 years. 10 years. From the age of 1 to 11. Think about the developmental and psychological impact of that. He's confined in a dark, small space, while his cousin has 2 bedrooms right upstairs.
And the source points out, even when he did finally get a room later, it wasn't because they realized, hey, maybe we shouldn't keep a human child in a closet. It was because they were terrified of the letter.
Fear again. It always circles back to fear. The first Hogwarts letter was specifically addressed to the cupboard under the stairs.
Which is such a flex by the magical world.
It terrified them because it meant the magical world was watching. It meant their darkest secret was out. They didn't move him for his comfort. They moved him to cover their tracks.
And let's not forget about that second bedroom. It was there the whole time. It was sitting there. Well, not empty. It was being used to store Dudley's broken.
That detail always gets me. Dudley has 2 bedrooms, one for sleeping, one for his junk, and Harry is sleeping with spiders under the staircase. It's a deliberate display of hierarchy. They are telling him every single night, you are less important than a broken remote control car.
It's like they're saying, this is where you belong. You and your freakishness locked away in the dark where no one can see you.
Precisely. It's symbolic and literal imprisonment. And even later in the series, when Harry comes back for the summer with his magical things, his broom, his books, his cauldron, where do they go?
Straight into the cupboard, locked up.
They literally try to lock away the part of him they hate to remind him of his place.
And it wasn't just confinement either. It was starvation, the food issues. I feel like this gets glossed over a lot because when he gets to Hogwarts, Harry eats like a king. The feasts are legendary.
They are, which makes the contrast so stark. The source highlights the Goblet of Fire diet specific. When Dudley had to go on a diet because the school nurse said he was becoming dangerously overweight, the Dursleys decided the whole house had to suffer solidarity.
Which is crazy on its own.
But Harry was given significantly less food than Dudley.
A quarter of a grapefruit.
A quarter of a grapefruit while he was a growing teenage boy. And Dudley, who had plenty of physical reserves, was getting more.
And Harry was basically surviving on care packages sent by his friends.
Right. Hagrid sent rock cakes, Hermione sent sugar-free snacks, Sirius sent things. The Dursleys didn't know. As far as they were concerned, they were actively starving a growing boy.
That is child neglect straight up.
And the source mentions a really brilliant, subtle detail later in the series. In Deathly Hallows, when Harry, Ron, and Hermione are hunting Horcrux and they are running out of food in the wood, Harry is able to survive those long periods without food much better than Ron or Hermione.
Because he was used to it.
Because he was conditioned to it. He had endured periods of near starvation at the Dursleys. His body knew exactly how to function on empty. That is lasting physical damage. That is biological trauma.
That is just heartbreaking. It's a survival instinct he had to develop in his own home. And then there's the actual physical violence.
Yes.
We usually think of Dudley beating him up, Harry hunting, they called it, which, by the parents, did absolutely nothing up.
They enabled it. They saw it as just boys being boys, or perhaps they thought Harry actually deserved it. But it wasn't just Dudley. The source heavily emphasizes that Vernon was physically threatening.
Right, Harry had a strict rule for himself, stay out of arm's reach.
That's a survival strategy. A child shouldn't have to mathematically calculate the safe distance from their guardian's hand.
No, they shouldn't. And there is a key incident in Order of the Phoenix that the source flags as genuinely life-threatening. Vernon actually strangles Harry.
He does.
He literally chokes.
He grabs him by the throat, chokes. This is the scene right after the Dementors attack in the alleyway. Harry and Dudley come back. Dudley is in a state of shock, and Vernon immediately assumes Harry used some kind of magic. He pins Harry against the wall by his neck.
He's cutting off his air supply.
He is. That is not discipline, that is assault. That is an attempt on his life, whether it was in the heat of the moment or not. In criminology, strangulation is actually one of the highest predictors of future lethal violence. That's the level of danger Harry was in that house.
That is so intense when you strip away the magical context. And Petunia isn't innocent either, the frying pan incident.
She swings a heavy, sudsy frying pan right at his head. Harry ducks, but the intent was to cause serious harm.
If that connects, that's a severe concussion, a skull fracture, or even worse.
She wasn't trying to swat him or spank him. She was trying to inflict blunt force trauma.
It's terrifying. And we haven't even mentioned Marge yet. Aunt Marge.
Oh, Marge.
She only shows up for a bit in Prisoner of Azkaban, but man, does she leave an impression.
Marge Dursley perfectly illustrates just how deep this rot goes in the family line. She's Vernon's sister, so this behavior is clearly learned. It runs in the blood. She treats Harry worse than a dog, literally.
She hits a 4-year-old Harry with a walking stick.
A 4-year-old. They were playing musical chairs at a birthday party. To ensure Dudley won the game, she whacked Harry on the shins with her heavy cane so he couldn't get to the chair in time.
That is villainy on a cartoon level. But when you picture a real, actual 4-year-old crying because an adult hit them with the humor is on. Sad.
It is deeply sad. She gives him dog biscuits to eat while Dudley gets expensive robot toys.
Yeah.
But the absolute worst is the tree incident.
Oh, right. The dog. Ripper.
She sicks her bulldog on him. She literally chases a small child up a tree and keeps him trapped up there past midnight. Imagine that scene in real life. It's dark, it's cold. Harry is clinging to a branch, absolutely terrified, while a vicious dog barks and snaps at his heels.
What are the adults doing while this happens?
They're laughing.
They're laughing at a terrified child.
Vernon and Marge are standing inside, drinking brandy and laughing out the window. To them, a child fearing for his physical safety is entertainment. That is purely sadistic.
There's no other word for it. It's taking joy in the suffering of a child.
It is. And that physical cruelty is matched completely by the emotional warfare they wage on him.
Right, the dehumanization, calling him, it's a boy, waste of space, slug.
It's a known psychological technique, dehumanization. If he's not a boy, if he's just an it, then you don't have to treat him with basic human decency. You don't have to feel any guilt about locking it in a cupboard.
The erasure is another massive part of it. No photos anywhere in the house.
That's such a subtle but incredibly painful detail from the text. The source points out that Harry never even saw a picture of himself growing up. The mantelpiece is absolutely covered in pictures of Dudley crying, Dudley riding his first bike, Dudley eating.
But no Harry. Not one.
Imagine that for a second. No record of your own existence in your own home. You were essentially a ghost.
And then there is the isolation. They actively prevented him from having any friends. Dudley scared everyone off at school by beating up anyone who talked to Harry, and the Dursleys completely poisoned the well with the neighborhood adult.
Criminal narrative.
St. Brutus's secure center for incurably criminal boys. That's where they told everyone Harry went to school once he went to Hogwarts.
They told the entire neighborhood he was a violent, irredeemable delinquent.
Which is incredibly calculating for people who are supposedly just stupid, ignorant bigots. They knew exactly what they were doing.
Oh, they absolutely did. It's a deliberate campaign of misinformation.
Yeah.
They destroyed his reputation so that no one would ever look too closely and no one would ever offer him help. Think about it. If the neighbors hear shouting or see Harry looking bruised, they just think, oh, that's that criminal boy acting out again.
It covers their abuse perfect. And the disparity in treatment is just the cherry on. Dudley gets 30-plus gifts on his birthday. Harry gets a coat hanger and a pair of Vernon's old socks.
Or a tissue.
The tissue.
Yeah.
That one has always stuck with me as the absolute meat.
The source makes a great point about sending a single tissue for Christmas is actually much worse than sending nothing at all.
Yeah, because nothing just means you forgot. A tissue means I remembered you and I want you to know exactly how little you mean.
It's a highly calculated insult. It involves effort. They had to put that tissue in an envelope, pay for the postage, and owl it to Scotland, just to say, here's a piece of trash.
And the swimming lesson. They paid for Dudley to have private lessons, but completely ignored Harry. And the book notes that Harry actually feared they secretly hoped he would drown.
That is the mindset of this child. He believes his guardians want him dead. And the source draws a parallel here that I think is really, really powerful. It compares Harry's life at Privet Drive to Dobby's life with the Malfoys.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Think about the condition. Forced manual labor, oversized hand-me-down clothes that look like rags, constant physical punishment for minor mistakes, expected to remain completely invisible when guests are over.
Do not speak unless spoken.
Exact. Harry was essentially a house elf in Privet Drive. He was a servant in his own home.
Which brings us to a really fascinating what-if scenario that the source brings up, the obscurial question.
This is a deep cut for the serious lore fans out. So for those who haven't seen the Fantastic Beasts movies, we need to explain what an obscurial is. It's this dark, incredibly powerful parasitic force that is created when a magical child suppresses their magic due to severe trauma and abuse.
Like Ariana Dumbledore or Credence Barebone.
Exactly. When you beat the magic down, when you terrify a child into hating their own inherent power, it turns inward. It rots. It becomes this destructive, invisible monster that can literally burst out of them and kill people.
So the analysis here is that Harry fits that profile perfectly.
He fits it to a T. He suffered daily abuse. He was forced to suppress his magic constantly. The Dursleys were actively trying to squash it out of him. They punished him severely every single time something even slightly magical happened around him.
So the big question is, why didn't Harry become an obscurial? Why didn't he just explode and destroy little Whinging in a giant cloud of black smoke?
Well, there are two ways to answer this. The Doylist answer, meaning the real-world, authorial reason, is simply that J.K. Rowling hadn't invented the concept of an obscurial yet when she wrote the early book. It's a much later addition to the lore.
Sure, that's the practical real-world answer. Authors retcon and add things as they build the universe. But what about the Watsonian answer, the in-universe explanation? Why does the story say he survived that trauma without turning into a monster?
It's speculative, of course, but the source suggests it's a massive testament to Harry's resilience and his fundamental nature. Despite everything they did to him, Harry never actually hated his magic. He didn't know what it was, but when he made the glass vanish at the zoo, or when he somehow jumped onto the school roof to escape Dudley's gang, he didn't feel shame.
Right. He felt confused, maybe a little excited by the weirdness of it, but not internalized shame.
Exactly. He didn't repress it in his soul. He just hid it to survive his guardians.
But it highlights just how dangerously close the Dursleys came to creating an absolute monster.
If they had succeeded in making Harry hate himself the way they hated him, they could have created a force that would have leveled their entire neighborhood.
That is terrifying to think about. A Harry Potter who becomes a devastating dark force not because of Voldemort's soul fragment, but simply because of Vernon Dursley's parents.
Exactly. They were playing with fire and had no idea.
Now, I do have to bring up a fan theory that the source debunks because I see this floating around online. The Horcrux.
Oh yes, the toxic radiation theory.
Right. The idea is that because Harry was a Horcrux, because he had a piece of Voldemort's evil soul residing inside, his mere presence made the Dursleys.
Like how wearing the locket made Ron paranoid and grumpy and jealous in Deathly Hallows.
Exact. People want to believe this because, honestly, it gives a magical, clean explanation for this. It says, hey, it's not entirely their fault. The dark magic corrupted them over it.
Right. But the source shuts this down pretty effectively. It's a neat theory, but it doesn't hold water.
How so? Break it down for us.
There are two main points that completely dismantle it. First, Professor McGonagall observes them in the very first chapter of the very first book, before Harry is even dropped on their doorstep. She spends the entire day sitting on their garden wall, disguised as a cat, just watching them interact.
And what is her takeaway?
She tells Dumbledore straight up that they are the worst sort of muggles imaginable. She sees Vernon yelling and pushing people around. She sees Petunia craning her neck to aggressively spy on people.
Yeah.
They were awful, toxic people before Harry ever arrived.
That's a really solid point. The baseline was already incredibly low.
And the second point is even strong. Harry lived in close quarters with Ron and Hermione in a tiny tent for months. He lived in a dorm room with Dean, Seamus, Neville, and Ron for 6 years. He slept mere feet away from them every single night.
Right. And none of them turned into abusive monsters. Neville didn't start locking him in a trunk.
Exactly. Ron didn't start starving him well. Ron got grumpy in the tent, but that was specifically when he was wearing the actual locket, not just from being near Harry.
The Horcrux object affects people, sure, but it seems to just amplify what's already there. The Dursleys weren't tragic victims of a dark object. They were just bad. We really have to accept that they
made those choices every day.
Okay, let's pivot slightly to the characters themselves. Let's look at them individually, starting with the head of the household, Vernon Dursley. The source describes him as the irredeemable bull.
Vernon is a fascinating character study because he is completely resistant to any kind of... He is the static villain of the mundane world. He is cruel, he is deeply bigoted, and above all, he is coward. And those three traits work together seamlessly to create his personality.
The cowardice is something I hadn't thought about as much, but the source really highlights. Because on the surface, he seems so blustery and loud and aggressive.
But that bluster is entirely the mask of a coward. Think about when he actually feels powerful. When does he yell?
When he's screaming at Harry, who is a child.
Right. Or when he's yelling at his employees at Grunnings, people he holds direct power over, people who can't fight back.
Yeah.
But put him in front of real, actual power. He completely crumbles.
Like with Mad-Eye Moody at the train station.
Or Arthur Weasley.
Yeah.
There's a very specific scene the source mentions in Goblet of Fire where Arthur Weasley comes to pick Harry up, and he forces the Dursleys to actually say goodbye to Harry. Vernon is absolutely terrified of Arthur's wand.
He's sweating, right.
He's looking at the wand, darting his eyes back and forth. He says goodbye with immense resentment, but he does it because he submits to superior force.
It's that classic bully dynamic, kick down, kiss up, or rather kick down, cower up.
Exactly. And the source brings up this idea of small man syndrome to explain his specific hatred of magic.
Oh, the backstory with James Potter. Yes, this is deep lore from Pottermore. I absolutely love this story because it explains so much about Vernon's specific grudge.
It really does. So back in the day, Petunia and Vernon were engaged, and they finally met James and Lily for dinner to get to know each other. Vernon, being Vernon, immediately tried to assert dominance over James. He asked James what kind of car he drove.
Trying to flex his material wealth. Like, I drive a nice company car. What about you?
Exactly. And James, being a pure-blood wizard who has lived his entire life in the magical world, has absolutely no idea about Muggle cars. He starts talking about his racing broom. Oh, I have a Nimbus, whatever. It's very fast.
And Vernon thinks he's being made fun of. He thinks James is just mocking him to his face.
So the tension rises immediately. Vernon starts bragging about his salary. He implies that wizards must all live on unemployment benefits because they don't have real job. He's trying to say, I have a job, I have real money, I am better than you.
And she's totally confused but amused. Just mentions his gold in Gringotts. Oh, I have plenty of solid gold left by my parents in the bank.
And Vernon just completely loses it. He can't handle it.
He storms out of the restaurant, right?
He stormed out. He felt small. He felt foolish. He couldn't compete with solid gold and flying brooms. His entire metric for success was just blown out of the water, and he never, ever forgave that slight. He held onto it so tightly that he called James an amateur magician at his own wedding just to try and feel superior again.
That is so incredibly petty. He held on to a grudge over a bad double date for a decade after James was violently murdered, and he took that bruised ego out on James's orphan.
His reaction to James and Lily's death wasn't sorrow or even basic human sympathy. It was a mix of quiet satisfaction and spite. He was secretly glad they were gone because their existence made him feel inferior.
And that materialism, that need for status, is his whole identity. The source mentions the all-England, best-kept suburban lawn company.
This is such a great, funny detail that turns dark. It was actually a wizarding prank. Some wizards set up this fake competition, but Vernon didn't know that. He was completely obsessed with winning it.
He was watering his lawn in the middle of the night during a severe drought just to make sure his grass was the greenest.
He cares more about the grass perfectly green than the actual state of the world or the rules of his community.
That is peak Vernon. Greed, and look at how his attitude completely flips when Harry inherits Sirius Black's house, Grimmauld. Suddenly, the boy he has despised for 15 years is interesting because he has prime London real.
You have a house in London. How much is it?
It's so transparently greedy, and the bit about Kingsley Shacklebolt,
Oh, this is perfect Vernon logic. So when the Dursleys finally have to go into hiding in the last book because Voldemort is after, Vernon is being incredibly stubborn. But he finally demands that Kingsley Shacklebolt be the one to guard him. Why? Not because Kingsley is a highly trained, powerful Auror who can stop death.
No, because Vernon saw on the Muggle news that King's the guy guarding the Muggle prime.
So in Vernon's head, Kingsley's the best simply because he's associated with high societal status.
He literally says he guards the PM, so he's good enough. It's pure, unfiltered ego. Even when he's literally running for his life from magical terrorists, he is worried about his stats.
Status is all he has.
Is there any explanation for why he's like this? Or is he just born inherently bad?
The source suggests it's a generational cycle. Looking at Marge, she's his sister, and she's just as bad, if not violently worse. It heavily implies their parents were likely bullies too. Vernon learned this behavior from his own upbringing, and he passed it directly, intentionally down to Dudley.
Which brings us to Petunia. Petunia Dursley. The source labels her as tragically bitter.
Petunia is so much more complex than Vernon. Vernon is just a brick wall of willful ignorance and bluster. But Petunia is a twisted knot of very real emotion, deep jealous, suppressed love, profound regret. She is a woman entirely defined by what she didn't get out of life.
Let's talk about her origin story, because knowing it really changes how you view her entire character.
It really does. She wasn't always the magic-hating suburbanite. As a child, she was absolutely desperate to be magical. She and Lily were very close. They played together in the park. They were best friends. But when Lily started showing early signs of magic, Petunia became deeply jealous. And when Lily actually got the Hogwarts letter,
Petunia wrote to Dumbledore.
She did. She secretly wrote a letter to the headmaster of Hogwarts, begging him to let her in. Please take me too. I want to go to the castle.
She wanted to go so badly. That actually breaks my heart a little bit.
It is genuinely sad. And Dumbledore wrote back very kindly, explaining that she couldn't come because she simply had no magic. But Lily saw the letter, and that's when the psychological pivot happened. To cope with the overwhelming pain of that absolute rejection, Petunia flipped the script in her head.
She decided that if she couldn't have magic, then magic was inherently freakish.
I didn't want to go anyway. You're all freaks.
Exactly. She became the normal one, the superior one. She built her entire adult identity around strictly not being magical.
And the source deeply connects this trauma to her intense cleaning obsession, right? The way she's always aggressively wiping surfaces.
Yes, her OCD the constant wiping of spotless surfaces, the shrieking at tiny bits of dirt, the manic spying on the neighbor. The source links this to a desperate need for control. She had absolutely no control over her child. She had no control over the fact that Lily was the special, chosen. So as an adult, she controls her house with an iron fist. She scrubs the chaos.
That is deeply sad. Obviously, it doesn't excuse a single ounce of the abuse she inflicted, but it perfectly explains the pathology behind it.
It does. And you see that childhood jealousy bleed directly into her adult life and how Lily. She outright refused to have Lily as a bridesmaid at her wedding.
Because she didn't want to risk being overshadowed by her magical, beautiful sister on her one special day.
She threw Lily's birth announcement for Harry straight into the trash. She couldn't even stand to look at it. And here's the fascinating contrast.
The blanket Harry was swaddled in when Dumbledore left him on the porch.
She kept it until the day she died. That is a tiny hidden breadcrumb of genuine. Despite all her hatred, she couldn't bring herself to throw away the very last physical thing that touched.
There's a moment in Order of the Phoenix that the source highlights as the knows more than she says moment, when the Dementors attack Dudley in the alley.
This is such a fantastic scene in the book. The boys come back to the house. Dudley is half comatose. Vernon is shouting, demanding to know what happened, asking, what the hell are Dementors? And Petunia just snaps. She answers him without thinking, says, they're the guards of Azkaban.
And the entire room just freezes.
Completely silent, Harry stares at her. Vernon stares at her. She physically claps her hand over her mouth. She realized she slipped up and broke her own facade. She revealed that she knows the lore. She knows the magical world. She overheard Severus Snape and Lily talking about it years and years ago when they were kids, and she remembered every single detail.
She's been carrying that secret knowledge around for decades, completely silent.
And when Harry tells them that Voldemort is back,
that moment gave me actual chills when I first read the book.
The source notes that Petunia is genuinely, deeply terrified. Vernon thinks it's all rubbish, just wizard nonsense, but Petunia turns. She knows exactly who Voldemort is. She knows exactly what he did to her sister. For a brief moment, she isn't the stiff-lipped, angry aunt. She's the traumatized sister of a murder victim realizing the killer has returned. She understands the life and death stakes better than Vernon ever.
It's so heavy. And yet, she almost redeems herself, but not quite. Final goodbye in deathly howl.
This is one of the most frustrating, agonizing moments in the entire series. The Dursleys are packing up the car to leave Privet Drive forever. Petunia stands there in the hallway. She looks at Harry. She pauses. She physically trembles, almost like she's fighting herself to speak. She opens her her mouth, and then she'd just leave. She snaps her mouth shut, gets in the car, and drives away forever.
Why? Why didn't she just say something?
Rowling's explanation, which the source cites directly, is that she almost acknowledged her long-buried love for. She almost wished Harry luck. She almost said, I know what you're up against, and I'm sorry. But she was too far gone, too damaged. She had spent too many years deliberately hardening her heart. She literally couldn't force the words out of her throat. The bitterness had permanently calcified.
That is just pure tragedy. To be so incredibly close to breaking the cycle and then failing at the very last second. Tragedy of character.
It really is. She is a prisoner of her own lifelong bitterness. She lived and died without ever freeing.
But then we have the cycle break. We have the one single person in that house who actually managed to escape the toxicity. We have Dudley Dursley.
Dudley is the surprise hero of this entire family dynamic. Not a hero in the wizarding sense, he doesn't grab a sword and fight a dragon, but in a very real human sense.
Though he starts out as a complete monster, he is a knight.
Oh, absolute. Violent tantrums, intense greed, constant bully. He physically kicks his mother, he throws his food at the walls, he beats up kids much smaller than him for fun. But the key insight from the source here is that Dudley is entirely a product of his environment. This was learned behavior. He wasn't born a bully. He was molded into.
Dumbledore actually calls the parents out on this directly, right?
He does. In Half-Blood Prince, Dumbledore visits Privet Drive, sits in their living room directly at Vernon and Petunia, and explicitly tells them, you have inflicted immense harm.
Pointing at Dudley. That's such a powerful, shocking line for them to hear.
He says the abuse they inflicted on Dudley by spoiling him so severely was just as damaging as the abuse they inflicted on Harry by starving. They made him morbidly obese. They gave him absolutely no boundaries or discipline. They taught him that the entire world revolved around his immediate desires. They set him up to completely fail as a functional human.
So what changed? What was the actual turning point for Big D?
The Dementor attack in Order of the Phoenix. That is the ultimate catalyst for his entire character arc.
Right. But Dudley's a Muggle. He can't even see the Dementors. He just feels the freezing cold and the despair. So what did he actually experience in that alleyway?
This is fascinating. Rowling confirmed that since he couldn't see the physical creatures, the Dementors forced him to see the only thing worth. He saw himself.
He saw himself.
He saw himself exactly as he truly was, stripped of his ego, stripped of his parents' constant delusional praise. He saw a cruel, spoiled, pathetic, violent bully. The Dementors forced a harsh, magical mirror right in front of his soul, and he was horrified by what he saw. That intense trauma forced immediate self-reflection.
That is profound. It wasn't just raw fear of a monster attacking him. It was the psychological terror of realizing he was the monster.
Exactly. And you see the behavioral shifts slowly happen afterwards. It's not instant, it's a slow burn, but it's there. He takes up boxing initially to be a better bully, sure, but the sport gives him discipline. He loses the weight, he's starting for himself, but the behavioral shift toward Harry, the tea. In Deathly Hallows, Harry is pacing his room, and he accidentally steps on a cold cup of tea left right outside his bedroom.
And Harry immediately thinks it's a trap.
Right. He's so deeply conditioned to their abuse that he assumes Dudley is trying to violently prank him. He thinks, is this poison? Is he trying to make me trip and break my neck? But it wasn't. It was an olive. It was Dudley, unable to express his feelings, just saying, I know you're having a hard time. Here, it was a clumsy, silent apology.
Then is the final departure, when the family is forced to go into hiding with the Order of the Phoenix. Vernon is being his usual stubborn self, refusing to listen to the wizards, trying to drag everyone into the car his own way.
And Dudley is the one who steps up and breaks the pattern. He insists on going with the Order. He officially breaks rank with his father for the first time in his... He says, I'm going with these Order. That is him becoming his own. He is actively rejecting Vernon's ignorant fear and choosing logic and
the handshake. That final, incredibly awkward moment between Harry and Dudley.
I don't think you're a waste of space.
It's such a Dudley way of phrasing it. It's not poetic. It's not, I love you, cousin, please forgive me. But for him, coming from his vocabulary, that is massive.
It is huge. He's finally acknowledging Harry's inherent value as a person, and Harry interprets it correctly. He realizes that coming from Dudley, that essentially means I love you, or at the very least, I respect you. You are my family, and you matter. It's the sliver of closure Harry desperately needed before.
And the source mentions they kept in touch as adults.
He did. Rowling revealed in interviews that Harry and Dudley are on Christmas card terms. They exchange cards every year, and more importantly, they actually visit each other occasionally so their kids can play together.
I love the mental image of that. Harry and Dudley just sitting in the living room in near silence, maybe having a beer, while their kids run around causing chaos.
The source notes it's deeply awkward. They don't really have much in common to talk about, but they do it anyway. They show up. They broke the generational cycle of hatred. Their children are just normal cousins playing together, not mortal enemies.
That is a wonderful glimmer of hope in a very, very dark background.
It really is. Dudley proves that you aren't doomed to be exactly who your parents made you. You can change. You can survive a profoundly toxic upbringing, realize your flaws, and choose to come out decent.
So let's wrap this deep dive up. We have this fascinating family dynamic. Vernon, the static, unchanging evil of willful ignorance. Petunia, the tragic figure who couldn't quite overcome her own bitter jealousy. And Dudley, the ultimate symbol of redemption and change.
It's a incredibly powerful trip. The Dursleys represent a very real warning. They warn us about the extreme dangers of idolizing normalcy above. They show us the corrosive damage that unaddressed jealousy can do to a family. And they show us that abuse doesn't always look like a dark wizard in a black cloak. Sometimes looks like a perfectly respectable suburban quiet.
Their weapon wasn't a wand. It was intentional neglect. It was silence. It was a dark, dusty cupboard under the stairs.
And as the source material makes so painfully clear, that can be just as damaging and traumatizing as any unforgivable curse.
It really makes you look at the beginning of those books entirely differently. It's not just a whimsical prologue before the magical train ride. It's a literal survival horror story that a small child somehow survived.
And the fact that Harry came out of that house with his capacity to love completely intact, that is the greatest magic that is his ultimate victory. The Dursleys. They tried to drill the love out of him, and they failed. Okay, let's leave it there. But here's a final thought for you listening at home. We know Dudley saw his true self during the Dementor attack, and the sheer horror of it actually changed him for the better. If Vernon or Petunia had been caught in that alley, if they had been kissed by a Dementor and forced to see themselves as they truly were, do you think they would have changed? Or were they just too far?
Now that is the real question.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.